I found the rules taped under my desk during my first night shift. Not on top, not inside a binder, under the desk. Hidden, like someone wanted them found only after it was too late. The paper looked old, folded dozens of times, coffee stains, water damage. The handwriting changed halfway through, as if multiple people had added to it over the years. Most of the rules seemed ridiculous. Rule 1. Never answer calls from room 313. Rule 2. If room 313 appears on the patient board, notify nobody. Rule 3. If you hear breathing behind the nurse's station, do not turn around. Rule 4. If a patient asks who is crying upstairs, tell them construction is underway. The hospital only had 3 floors. There was no upstairs. I almost threw the list away. Then, at 12:37 a.m., room 313 called. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I checked the screen. Room 313. My stomach tightened. There wasn't a room 313. I knew every room on the floor. The numbering ended at 328. No 313. No missing section. Nothing. Yet there it was. Room 313. Calling. I let it ring. Eventually it stopped. Then every monitor flickered, only for a second. But during that second, one room appeared between 312 and 314. Room 313. The image vanished immediately. The room wasn't empty. Someone had been standing inside, watching the camera. At 1:04 a.m., an elderly patient pressed her call button. When I entered, she looked terrified. Not sick, terrified. She pointed toward the hallway. "Who's the man outside my room?" I checked. Nobody. The hallway was empty. The woman shook her head. "No." Her voice trembled. "The other hallway." What other hallway? The woman slowly looked toward the wall, not the door, the wall. "Behind this one." I left without answering, because I suddenly remembered Rule 4. If a patient asks who is crying upstairs, tell them construction is underway. 20 minutes later, I heard it. Listening carefully. Crying, very faint, above me. Children. Dozens of children, somewhere overhead. The sound traveled through the ceiling tiles. Impossible. The 3rd floor was the highest floor. There was nothing above us. Yet the crying continued. Soft, distant, almost like an entire pediatric ward hidden somewhere overhead. The nurse beside me heard it too. I could tell by her expression. But she never acknowledged it. Neither did anyone else. At exactly 2 a.m., every hallway clock stopped. Same second, same time, 2 o'clock. The digital clocks, the wall clocks, even my wristwatch. Everything froze. Then the phone rang again. Room 313. This time I answered. The moment I lifted the receiver, I regretted it. I heard breathing. Not normal breathing. Dozens of people breathing at once. Slow, heavy, like a crowd standing very close together. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Just breathing. Then a voice whispered, "Do you know where they put us?" The line went dead. Immediately. The clocks started moving again. 2:01 a.m. Every clock, at the exact same second. I stared at the receiver for a long time. Then I checked the floor plan. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe stupidity. Maybe both. The blueprint showed something strange. A sealed corridor, located directly between rooms 312 and 314. No label, no explanation, just a section crossed out decades ago. When I asked security about it later, the guard looked uncomfortable. Then he said something strange. "There used to be another wing." "Used to?" He nodded. "Before the fire." "What fire?" The guard immediately changed the subject. At 2:29 a.m., the breathing started. Behind the nurse's station. Slow. Close. Very close. Rule 3. Do not turn around. I kept staring at my monitor. The breathing continued. I could feel air touching the back of my neck. Something stood behind me, close enough to reach out, close enough to touch me. The breathing lasted almost 3 minutes, then stopped. I never turned around. I still don't know what was there. At 2:47 a.m., the cameras failed. Every monitor went black, except one. Room 313. The room returned, perfectly clear. A hospital room lit by a single overhead light. The bed was occupied. A patient sat upright beneath the sheets, motionless, watching the camera. Then another patient appeared behind him, standing beside the bed. Then another, then another. Soon the room contained dozens of people, all facing forward, all staring directly into the lens. The image zoomed in by itself, closer, 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 until one face filled the screen. Burn scars, missing skin, empty eye sockets. Then the patient smiled. The feed died. The hospital lights immediately dimmed. Somewhere overhead, the children started crying again, much louder this time, running, laughing, screaming. Thousands of footsteps crossing a floor that shouldn't exist. Then I heard an announcement, not through the speakers, through the walls. A voice echoing throughout the building. "Room 313 is now accepting visitors." Every patient monitor alarm activated simultaneously. The sound was deafening. Doors throughout the ward began opening by themselves, one after another. Patients stepped into the hallway. Old men, women, teenagers, all staring toward the same location. The blank wall between 312 and 314. A crack appeared in the paint, then a doorway. My blood turned cold. A doorway that had not existed moments earlier. Above it hung a sign, Room 313. The patients began walking toward it, slowly, silently, like sleepwalkers. Nobody resisted, nobody hesitated. They simply walked, one by one, into the doorway and disappeared. The corridor beyond looked impossibly long. Rows of hospital rooms stretching into darkness. Hundreds of doors. Hundreds. Far more than could fit inside the building. The crying overhead suddenly stopped. Complete silence. Then every light shut off. Darkness swallowed the hallway. For a moment I couldn't see anything. Then a single fluorescent light flickered on inside room 313 at the far end of the corridor. A silhouette stood beneath it, watching me, waiting. Then the phone rang, one final time. I already knew the caller. Room 313. I answered. The same whisper returned, only now I recognized dozens of voices speaking together. Men, women, children, patients, staff, all layered together. They asked one question. Why did you leave us there? The line disconnected. The doorway slammed shut, the wall returned. The room vanished. The hospital became normal again. By morning, every patient had returned to bed. No missing records, no reports, no evidence. Administration claimed nothing unusual occurred. Of course they did. 3 weeks later, I found an old newspaper article. 32 years earlier, a fire destroyed an experimental ward under construction. Official death toll, 31 patients, 12 staff. Location of the fire? Future Room 313. The article ended with a sentence that still keeps me awake. Investigators were unable to recover every body. Last night I was asleep when my phone rang. Unknown number, 3:13 a.m. I answered without thinking. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then I heard hospital intercom static and a familiar voice whispering, "Visiting hours have started." When I started working nights at St. Gabriel Hospital, everyone warned me about room 208. Not because the patient was violent, not because he was unstable, because he was always right. The man had been admitted 6 months earlier, late 70s, no family, no visitors, no clear diagnosis. Most of the staff avoided him. The few who didn't eventually stopped talking about him altogether. I learned why on my 4th shift. At 12:11 a.m., I entered his room to check vitals. The old man was sitting upright in bed, awake, waiting, as if he'd known exactly when I would arrive. Before I could say anything, he looked at me and asked, "How long has the janitor been here?" I frowned. "What janitor?" The old man pointed into the hallway. "The one standing behind you." My stomach tightened. I turned around. Nobody. Empty hallway. When I looked back, the patient seemed disappointed. He wasn't supposed to be here yet. I finished my checks and left. People say strange things in hospitals, especially at night. I tried to forget it. Then, at 12:48 a.m., a janitor named Steve suffered a massive heart attack in the basement, dead before paramedics reached him. The same janitor. The only overnight janitor on duty. I remembered what the old man had said, and for the first time, I felt uneasy. The next night, I visited room 208 again. The patient smiled when I entered. "You came back." I ignored the comment, checked his monitor, recorded his blood pressure. Normal. Everything normal. Then he looked toward the door. "Tell the woman in 315 she has 3 hours." The room suddenly felt colder. "What?" The old man sighed. 3 hours. I left immediately. At 3:17 a.m., the woman in room 315 suffered a fatal stroke. Exactly 3 hours later. The news spread through the hospital by sunrise. Nobody connected it to room 208. Nobody except me. And maybe one other person. Because later that night, I found an envelope sitting on my desk. No name, no note. Inside was a single sheet of paper, 27 names, every one crossed out. Beside each name was a date, a time, and a room number. Every patient listed
had died in the hospital. Every prediction had been correct. At the bottom of the page was one final sentence. Do not ask him about yourself. For a while, I followed that advice, for almost 2 weeks. Then curiosity won. It always does. At 2:04 a.m. one Thursday, I entered room 208 and shut the door behind me. The old man immediately smiled. You finally decided. My throat felt dry. Decided what? To ask. I should have left. Instead, I sat down. The patient leaned forward slightly.
Waiting. I took a breath. When am I going to die? The smile vanished instantly. For the first time, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. His eyes moved toward the corner of the room, toward the darkness beside the window, as if someone was standing there, watching us. The old man lowered his voice. I can't answer that. Why not? His face turned pale. Because he's already looking at you. Every hair on my body stood up. I slowly looked toward the corner. Nothing. Just darkness. When I looked back, the old man's attention remained fixed there, not blinking, not moving, watching. Then he whispered, Don't let him know you can see him. The lights flickered. The monitor beeped once. Then everything returned to normal. The old man never spoke another word that night. At 2:51 a.m., security called. A patient had wandered into an unused wing of the hospital. I headed down alone. The East Wing had been closed for years. Most lights didn't work. Half the rooms were empty. The place felt abandoned. As I walked down the corridor, I noticed something strange. Every room door was open. Every single one, even though they had been locked earlier. Then I heard footsteps, slow, steady, following me. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I continued. They continued, always matching my pace, always several feet behind, never closer, never farther. I refused to look, because for some reason, I remembered what the old man had said. Don't let him know you can see him. The footsteps followed me all the way back to the active ward, then disappeared. At 3:33 a.m., room 208's heart monitor flatlined. Doctors rushed in. Code team arrived. The usual chaos. But the old man never fought, never panicked, never resisted. He simply watched the doorway, smiling, as if he had been expecting someone. The resuscitation lasted 7 minutes. Failed. Time of death, 3:40 a.m. Everyone left eventually. The room became quiet, empty. But something bothered me. During the entire code, the old man never once looked at the doctors, never looked at the nurses, never looked at the equipment, only at the doorway, as if someone had been standing there, waiting. An hour later, while cleaning out the room, I found a notebook hidden beneath the mattress. The final pages were filled with names, thousands of names, dates, times, deaths, decades worth. The last page contained only 2 entries. The first was his own, already crossed out. Below it was another name, mine. My blood turned cold. Beside my name was a date, tomorrow. No time, no room number, just the date. I stared at it for several minutes, trying to convince myself it was nonsense, a coincidence, a cruel joke.
Then I noticed something written underneath. Smaller handwriting, added later.
Almost as an afterthought. He finally noticed you. I didn't sleep that day, or the next. I called in sick, stayed home, locked every door, ignored every phone call. Midnight came, then 1 a.m., then 2. Nothing happened. By 3 a.m., I started feeling ridiculous. Maybe the old man had been delusional. Maybe I was losing my mind. Then I heard footsteps in my apartment hallway. Slow, steady, approaching my front door. I froze. The footsteps stopped outside. Silence. A full minute passed, then 2, then 3. No knock, no voice, nothing. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, except for one thing. A folded piece of paper on the floor, right outside my door. I waited until sunrise before opening it. Inside was a page torn from the old man's notebook. Only one sentence had been written on it. You looked. Now he knows you can see him too. That was 3 years ago. I'm still alive. At least I think I am. But every night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., I hear the same footsteps outside my door. Always approaching, never entering, never leaving. Just standing there, waiting. And each night, they sound a little closer than before.
On my first night shift, they gave me a map of the hospital. 3 floors, emergency department, surgery, ICU. Nothing unusual. By my third night, I discovered the map was lying. It started at exactly 3:07 a.m. I remember because I was watching the clock. The ward was quiet, most patients asleep. The nurse station empty except for me. Then the elevator dinged, soft, almost polite. The display above the doors showed a number that shouldn't have existed. 4. The hospital only had 3 floors. I knew that for a fact. Yet there it was, a glowing red 4. The doors opened. Nobody stepped out. But something was different. The elevator wasn't empty. It contained a hallway. Not an elevator interior, a hallway. Long, dark, hospital lights flickering overhead, rows of patient rooms stretching into the distance, far farther than physically possible. The doors closed before I could react. The number disappeared.
Everything returned to normal. I told myself I imagined it. I almost believed it. Then one of the patients woke up, a little old woman in room 112. She pressed her call button repeatedly. When I entered, she looked terrified. He opened again. What opened? The 4th floor. Every muscle in my body tightened. The woman grabbed my wrist. Her hand felt ice cold. Whatever you do, her voice cracked. Don't let them bring you upstairs. I tried asking what she meant. She refused to answer. Instead, she pulled the blanket over her head like a frightened child. At 3:07 a.m. the following night, I waited beside the elevator. The doors opened again. Floor 4. The impossible hallway returned. This time I noticed room numbers. They continued endlessly. The air inside looked hazy, like smoke or fog. Somewhere deep in the corridor, I heard a patient monitor beeping. Slow, steady, a heartbeat. Then I heard footsteps, coming toward the elevator. I stepped back immediately. The doors closed. Just before they shut, I caught a glimpse of someone turning a corner far down the hallway. A nurse, old uniform, white dress. bloodstains across the front. The next morning, I searched hospital records. I found an article from 1978. A fire. A catastrophic fire. The original 4th floor had burned almost completely. 23 patients died. 9 staff members. The floor was demolished afterward, removed entirely. Officially, it no longer existed. That night, I didn't want to stay. But staffing shortages don't care about fear. So I returned. At 2:52 a.m., a patient disappeared. Room 119, a man recovering from heart surgery. 1 minute asleep, the next minute gone. Security searched everywhere. Nothing. No exit footage, no witnesses. Nothing. Then, at exactly 3:07 a.m., the elevator opened, and the missing patient stepped out. My blood froze. He looked wrong. Not injured, not dead. Wrong. His hospital gown was burned black around the edges. His skin looked gray. His smile was too wide. Security rushed toward him. The patient pointed toward the open elevator. Only one sentence left his mouth. They don't want to stay alone anymore. Then he sprinted back inside. The doors slammed shut. He vanished. Security footage later showed something impossible. The man never returned. The camera recorded him entering the elevator, but never leaving, as if he simply disappeared. After that, nobody laughed about floor 4 anymore. Because 2 nights later, another patient vanished. Then another. Then another. Always before 3:07 a.m., always returning briefly, always saying something strange. One patient kept repeating, "They keep adding rooms." Another whispered, "The fire never stopped." A third looked directly into the camera and said, "They built the hospital on top of it." Then smiled, then disappeared. At 3:07 a.m. on my 7th shift, curiosity finally destroyed my common sense. The elevator opened, the hallway appeared, and I stepped inside. The doors closed behind me. Immediately, the hospital vanished. No sounds, no alarms, no voices, nothing. The air smelled like smoke. The walls looked scorched, paint blistered from heat. Room numbers stretched in both directions, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The corridor should not have fit inside the building. I started walking. Every room door stood open. Inside each room sat a patient, watching me. Not speaking, not moving, just watching. Burned faces, burned skin, burned uniforms. The farther I walked, the more crowded the hallway became. Patients stood shoulder to shoulder. Doctors, nurses, orderlies, all silent, all staring. Then I reached room 423. The door was closed, unlike every other room. A note had been taped to it, written in faded handwriting. "Do not open until someone remembers us." My hands were shaking. I should have turned back. Instead, I opened the door. Inside sat dozens of hospital beds. Every bed occupied, every patient awake, every patient staring at me. And standing among them was the nurse I'd seen before, the one in the burned uniform. She looked exhausted, not evil, not angry, just exhausted. "You finally came upstairs." I couldn't speak. The nurse slowly approached. "The hospital keeps forgetting." "What?"
Her eyes filled with tears. The people. Behind her, every patient slowly stood up, one after another, hundreds of eyes fixed on me.
The nurse pointed toward a wall covered in photographs. Doctors, patients, children, families, thousands of faces. Every photo burned around the edges, every name scratched out. They erased us. The lights flickered. Immediately, every patient turned toward the hallway, listening, waiting. Then I heard it, an elevator ding, somewhere far away. The nurse's face changed. Fear, real fear. They found another one. The patients started moving, not toward me, toward the elevator. Hundreds of footsteps, thousands, the entire floor coming alive at once. I ran, back through the corridor, past endless rooms, past endless faces, toward the elevator. The crowd followed behind me, not running, walking, slowly, confidently, like they knew I couldn't escape. The elevator doors stood open. I jumped inside, pressed 3. Nothing happened. The nurse appeared at the end of the hallway, watching me. Then she said something I'll never forget. "You're on the list now." The doors closed. Everything went dark. When they reopened, I was back on the 3rd floor, alone. The clock read 3:08 a.m. 1 minute had passed. Only one. I quit the next morning, moved away, changed hospitals, changed cities. I never told anyone why. 3 years later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was an employee ID badge, burned around the edges. The photo showed me. Not a current photo, a hospital photo. Me wearing the old St. Alder uniform. On the back was a room assignment, floor 4, room 423. And beneath it, written in black marker, "Thank you for remembering us." The problem is, I've never worked at St. Alder Hospital. At least, not yet.